Welcome to Let's Talk Property, an informal podcast show all about the UK property market and mortgage market. I'm Nizam, and joining me is my co-host Lee. Whether you're a seasoned property investor or just starting to think about buying your first home, this podcast is for you. We'll be discussing a range of topics, including the latest market trends, tips for finding the perfect property, and how to secure the best mortgage deal. So join us as we explore the world of property and help you make informed decisions about your next property purchase. So today's episode, Lee, do you want to introduce the topic you're talking about?
Yeah, avoid nasty surprises. So the costs that first-time buyers don't know about. I think we see it time and time again, and in our role that we speak to many first-time buyers, and they're kind of hit with some unexpected costs. They spend so much time saving for a deposit, all that hard-earned money, and then they get to the point where they buy the property or they want to start buying a property, and they forgot about particular costs. Now, what I do want to stress is a lot of these costs are quite important. So they're not ones that really you can kind of cut or get rid of, or, and not ones to avoid really. So I think they're more just to set expectations, what to expect, and they're quite important costs. So just want to kind of reiterate that it's not costs you want to avoid paying, I must admit.
So these are costs basically that you can't proceed without paying. So there's no way around them. It is you either have it or you don't buy your home. Is that what
technically you could be? I mean, if you cut costs on them and you don't do it, it could cost you in the long term, or it could have it could have a detrimental effect, or it could have quite a big impact on you later down the line. So these are important costs. I guess they're not mandatory, just to be clear, but they're really important, and they're probably, they're strongly advised, these costs. So hopefully it will be helpful to particularly first-time buyers.
Let's dive into the nasty surprises. Let's see what we've got in store.
First one, we've done a podcast on this already, and it is a property survey. In terms of the property survey, it's to check the condition of a property. It's a report that's done, and the expected cost for this, and these are kind of guideline costs. They're not exact, but they're guidelines depending on the property value. Anything between £500 to £1,000 is what a property survey would cost. There are different levels, which means there are ones that are more in depth than others. There are ones who are more suited to particular property types, but this is a cost, really, a recommendation. A property survey is a recommendation if you are buying a property of a particular age, maybe 10 years or more particularly. It's strongly recommended that you get a property survey done to make sure the condition of the property is okay, and you're not going to have any nasty surprises, as we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. So I would, and in most cases, probably recommend this on most properties. Not new build. There's different reasons for that. They have particular insurances in place and the warranties, generally speaking, on most new build properties. But a property survey is a must. That would be my first one.
Fantastic. And are you going to talk through when they might be payable? Because I know that's a question a lot of people will most likely have as well, is, okay, I've got this fee, when do I pay it, if that makes sense?
Typically it's before you before you move into the property. So today I'll be doing some costs before you move in, and then shortly I'll talk about some of the costs, unexpected costs when you're in the property. So one before you move in, and then one once you're in. But a property survey is a cost actually you spend before you actually move into the property. You're absolutely right. So it's a cost during the process, typically once your mortgage is approved, is what we'd recommend.
That's good to know. I was just having a little look at what episode 6.
Episode 6
is the episode we did around buying a home without a property survey. So if you want to learn more about the different types of surveys and some more questions around them in particular, I think it might have been an episode you covered quite well on the different levels. So that would be a good one to listen back to.
Absolutely. And a £500 to £1,000, depending on property value, is rough. Are kind of the estimates there, which is still a reasonable sum of money there. Hiring, van and removals. This is always one that a lot of people forget about. Is have you got stuff to move? Have you got things that you need to move into the new property? And I'll be honest, the starting point is hiring a van. That's probably one of the most cost effective. If luckily you've got a friend that can lend you that sort of a vehicle that can help you out. And then all the way down to like removals, where someone is physically packing and helping you move your things from one property to another. Depending again on distance from one property to another, depending on what service you get, that can cost anything from £50 for hiring a van to it could be a couple of £1,000 for removals. That they're just, again, depending on how much stuff you've got to move and the distance and everything else. The cost is quite varied, but it is something that a lot of people do forget. You're focusing on the deposit, you're focusing on everything else, and actually, how am I going to move my stuff? If you're fortunate enough to have family and friends and they can help you with that, fantastic. That's a good saving. But it's another cost a lot of people do forget about is hiring a van. And if it's just yourself, you might actually, or you've got a young family, you might actually need removals to help you pack and move the things that you need to. So again, that's another cost that can really vary. So something to think about before you move in. Before you start moving in, not on the day you complete. You
It's probably a bit late to start
on the day. Yeah.
Start packing your things on the day that the people are knocking on your door asking for their key. It's probably no, that's great. A great one, I think. Sorry, we're gonna add to that.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I was just going to say, really a really important fee. Actually doesn't get talked about a lot. Absolutely right, and it could easily be missed. But yeah, believe it or not, you've got to be able to get all your stuff out of your house if you're selling it and move it into your new house, and that costs money. So I think, like you said, cheap way of doing it if you've got a van or someone that's got a van. But obviously, if not, going to need to make sure you get a budget for it. And actually, from experience of having moved in the last year, it's not cheap. It can be quite expensive, especially if you've got people packing for you. But with a young child, it was worth the money in my experience anyway. I need to get the number for your van man if you're getting a van for 50 quid.
That was just online. I don't know the reputation of the van man, but that was
it might not make it to your new home. It's not Del Boy, is it?
You might not see the items again. They'll move them somewhere, but
it's not a yellow three-wheeler, is it, Lee?
I think it was just a cab, actually, £50.
Was it?
No. But no, I think there were kind of the guideline costs online. I think you can get them as cheap as £50 for maybe an afternoon or something, or a day. I guess it might be a really small van, perhaps. So if you've got a few heavy items just to move, then it might just be that sort of cost. Great one. Solicitor fees. Now, I think most people know they may need a solicitor to buy a home. I think a lot, people when they're buying a home and they're listening to this thinking, I know I need a solicitor. There are solicitor fees. You need to pay a solicitor, and I think that is kind of well documented in terms of what to expect. And solicitor fees can be anything from typically £500 to a couple of £1,000s. Depending on the reputation, depending on how good they are as well. There's so many things there. But what I wanted to delve into is not necessarily the standard solicitor fees, it's actually the additional solicitor fees. And I think this is really important to kind of maybe build a relationship or get a recommendation for a solicitor before you start buying a property. Because if you have a unique set of circumstances, and it could be something like you're having your deposit gifted from your grandparents and your parents, those sort of things do actually incur additional solicitor fees, because they have to do additional checks on where the money's coming from, money laundering checks. Don't want to delve too much into it, but there are additional fees for a solicitor depending on the sort of circumstances. Also, if you're buying through a scheme or you're buying a flat, we got cut off. If you're buying through shared ownership or you're buying a flat, again, these are things that are additional costs to the norm. So you'll get a sort of a standard set of fees, which are generally legal fees that solicitors provide. But there are additional fees, so it's really important to start building a relationship with a solicitor or taking a recommendation with a solicitor before you start looking, understanding what it's going to cost you. Because what you don't want to do is get to completion, because that's ultimately when the bulk of the fees are due with solicitors. And you don't want, I've got 2 gifted deposits, I've got a flat, it's under shared ownership, and all of a sudden you've got to pay an extra £500,000 in fees. So there's lots of kind of, a lot of people sort of say they're hidden fees. Typically solicitors just charge on the work that they've got to do, and they will, if they have to do an extra bit of work or an extra check, then they will charge for that, and that can build up. So I think what I take from this is, I can't give you a range, but I can say build a relationship with a solicitor before you start looking, take a recommendation, and get an understanding of what costs to expect with your set of circumstances in particular from a solicitor.
Yeah,
that would be my other one.
I think that's I think that's a really good one as well, because a lot of people kind of are worried that they're going to get ripped off. I find anyway, people are worried that okay, the broker's going to rip me off, the solicitor's going to rip me off, the person that's selling the house is going to try and rip me off. So you are kind of very cautious, and you probably would tread very carefully if you're moving house or you're buying a first home, and fees are something that can get out of hand if you don't keep an eye on them. But you're absolutely right. I think solicitor fees they're there for a reason. They're there to protect you. Solicitors will charge different fees depending on who they are and how good they are, I guess, really, as well. But what I tend to find is most solicitors, if you ask them, or even just on an initial quote, will give you a list, won't they, of all of the additional disbursements or fees anyway that they might charge for additional work. So if it's, like you said, if it's shared ownership, add this on as a cost. If you need to, if you're remortgaging with a transfer of equity, add this fee on. If you have to deal with a gifted deposit, add this fee on, because it is, believe it or not, it's additional work and that costs money. So I think, from my experience, that's a really, really good one. And I think from my experience, there probably are solicitors that will maybe try and push it, but actually, on the whole, the solicitors we certainly know are quite competitive and fairly careful about adding fees in once, if they fully understood your circumstances in the process, unless there's additional work that needs to be done, which is unforeseen, their fee will probably be what their fee is. I think that's a great one, and something that needs to be accounted for, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. My next one, it costs before you move in. Again, last one is depending on what you want, but I think we covered this in the last episode, was mortgage broker. So depending on, some mortgage brokers are free, and some charge a fee, and that really you tend to find it really depends on the service that you want or the help that you want with buying your home. So if you want someone who just maybe gets you a mortgage, kind of stops there, then generally they're fee-free mortgage brokers, which is great. That does the job what you need to. But if you're looking for someone maybe more to hold your hand, to kind of support you in buying your first home, and that could be preparing you to buy it. So it could be things like helping you with a deposit, building your credit score, getting you ready to buy, and then also supporting you during the house buying journey in terms of helping you with solicitors, communicating with the solicitor, or communicating with estate agents, those conversations that you've not had before. If you're looking for someone to help you with that and take hold of that, and we talked about the real benefits of a mortgage broker in the last episode, I think if you're looking for that, then that is another fee, to expect, is a mortgage broker fee, because I think, I'll be honest, most of the time, most first-time buyers need the help. They need the help. They don't just want someone to do the mortgage. They need help with the solicitors. They need help understanding. They need help with agents and conversations they've not had before. They need that hand holding. So it is another cost to expect, particularly with mortgage brokers that will support you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one as well. And it's, most mortgage advisors should be disclosing what their fee is to you when you first speak with them. Especially once they've understood your circumstances and how much time it's going to take them. If they charge a fee, like you said, the more kind of ones that offer a more enhanced service or offer you with more than just speak to them once, get the mortgage approved and then move on. If you're looking for a point of contact or a relationship with someone that's going to help you all that through that process, they're more likely to charge you a fee, and that fee will be disclosed to you up front. So you can decide then, is this something I'm happy to pay for the service that they're offering me? And like you said, that all works differently. Some brokers charge up front, some charge at the end, some charge different fees on different points as stages. And certainly making sure you've got the money to pay that at the right stage is really key. And like you said, we touched on last week's episode in terms of the benefits of using a mortgage broker and whether that's going to be right for you. But yeah, I think that's another crucial one. And I without going into loads of detail or covering what we've old ground, you might say, I talked about being really cautious with spending and trying to keep your fees to a minimum. And I'm the same. I would be doing that. If I was a first time buyer right now, I'd be thinking, I've got a massive deposit because I've had to save a massive deposit to get on the ladder. Therefore, I want to make sure everything else is an absolute minimum. I don't want to be paying anything I don't need to. So, a mortgage broker fee, you might think, do I really need to pay this? Or no, you don't, if you don't want to use a mortgage broker. But what cost is it going to potentially be elsewhere? And it might be that the more taking too long to get a mortgage, they might withdraw the property purchase. Therefore, you miss out on the property. You might start getting estate agents pressuring you, and you don't know what to do. You can't get hold of the bank who was supposed to be, calling you 2 days ago but haven't. So it's kind of, there's a financial cost short term that could be saved by not using a broker, but also I would also think about, again, without talking about last week, but think about okay, actually, what value am I getting, and what are the what ifs? If this goes wrong or this goes wrong, what value can a mortgage advisor give me, a mortgage broker give me?
Yeah, absolutely. Moving in costs. So these are really, really important, and these are kind of ones that you need to really consider. So buildings and contents insurance. Most people have come across the term, I think, but you are required as a mandatory requirement as a minimum to have buildings to insure the building. So again, that is a monthly cost or a yearly cost, depending on what your call coming through. In terms of costs, again, buildings and contents is something that you really need to consider. And again, it's getting those quotes early. These are things before you move in, but things you need when you move in, but things that you need to think about before you move in, and understanding what those costs are. And again, you can pay on a yearly or monthly. But buildings and contents is insurance, and it's there to cover you on things that generally you can't afford to lose. So obviously the building. So if it was to burn down or something heavy was to happen to the property, it needs to be insured, and that is a requirement by the mortgage lender as well. So that is a legal requirement. And then contents is exactly what it says it is. It covers the contents of your property, and if, for example, if you were to turn your property upside down and everything was to fall out, those are the items that would be covered on contents insurance. Again, it's another piece of important insurance that is recommended when owning your own home and becoming a first-time buyer. The other one is, again, I hate to go down the insurance route, but again, it's another important cost. It's mortgage protection, insurance, life insurance, income protection, life and critical illness. I'm not going to delve too deep into it, but effectively, if something was to happen to you or your family, it's making sure you keep your home. So if you were to pass away, if you were to suffer from an illness, if you were to stop working, you've got to pay a monthly premium for making sure you keep your home. So again, that is another cost, and a cost your mortgage advisor or mortgage broker should be able to help you understand. Mortgage and protection advisor should help you understand, but it is a cost that is expected when owning your own home. So it's something you really need to consider and get the cost of that before you move in, is what I'd recommend. Lastly, costs when you're moving. If you're buying a flat or if you're buying a new build property, there are additional charges. So things like service charge and ground rent. So if you're buying a flat, a leasehold property, there is service charge and ground rent. Service charge is generally a monthly cost, and this can really vary. So it's really important you understand these costs, because they could be costly. It could be anything from £1 to £500 a month, depending on where you're buying, what building you're buying in. It can be a real vast cost. And obviously, if it's monthly, it can be, it can be quite a large cost. So something you really need to understand, and that is more specifically once you find the property, you really probably need to dig deep into what the costs are, particularly more around a flat. They have service charge and ground rent charges. So they're not expected. First-time buyers don't expect these costs, and I think they are hidden. They are hidden on most, when you're looking at properties. So these are more costs that are on typically flats, if I'm honest, but it is something to kind of be mindful of in when you're looking at properties or before you move in. But these are costs you pay when you're in the property, just to be clear: service charge and ground rent. And maintenance charge. So this is generally on newer properties, but you will pay an annual maintenance charge. Generally, with most streets and most areas, you will have to pay a maintenance charge on a new build property, depending on the development. And that is just to keep the grounds maintained. So it could be a local park, it could be a field, it could be a tree, or it could be many different things. But these are these are costs that are unexpected. And if you're buying new build, or you're buying a property that's probably in the last 20 odd years, you need to understand those maintenance costs, because when you buy a property, everyone is legally bound to pay these annual maintenance costs in the street. So it is another cost to expect when moving in.
Brilliant. And I guess they're costs that you can ask the estate agent, developer for, aren't they? They're not things that, like you said, they're not always clearly displayed. I don't think that's any intent. I think it's more just that sometimes the agents don't know what the figures are, so they don't put them on the particulars. But I think, that's something that if you don't know the answer, or if you're looking at buying a leasehold or a flat, I think absolutely ask that question up front before you even go and view it. What's the leasehold? What's service charge, ground rent, and if it's a new build, what's the maintenance charge? Because like you said, you've got to factor that into your monthly payments along with all those other things that you said as well. Brilliant. Great stuff.
Absolutely.
Some really good ones there.
No, hopefully that's helped. And again, I think the moral of the story is just really prepare as much as possible. A good mortgage broker should be able to understand most costs, help you understand most costs, really, I think. But it's and obviously the opportunity, once you find a property, really dig deep into what the costs are, ongoing costs are of the property, really find out what they are. So hopefully that's helped most people. And I think that's it from me.
Brilliant. Excellent. Great show. I think that is hopefully really helpful for not just first time buyers, but also people looking to move home as well. But excellent. Okay, great stuff. Do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for joining us to another episode of Let's Talk Property. We hope you find the discussion of the UK property market informative and helpful. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to send us a message. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, follow us on social media for updates on future episodes. Until next time, we'll see you in the property market.